Hello, hello, lovely listeners.
All of you ghouls and goblins.
And everything in between. Welcome to Across the Veil with Zelda Kimball
and Emma Ragsdale.
So, I know that you were a graveyard girl growing up.
Yes.
But I was always really obsessed with fairies. So when I wasn't in the pool playing mermaids, I was running around the roots of old trees, hoping to catch a glimpse of gossamer wings.
I would like the record to show, though, I was also a fairy girl.
Hell yeah!
I was very into them. We was looking for those circles, and we had a lot of books on fairies as well.
Well, I couldn't even begin to tell you all of the fairy books that I read and obsessed over while I was growing up.
Oh yeah, I was obsessed with them, and mermaids, for the record. We both share that.
Yeah, I was a swimmer for a good many years.
Oh, me too. I was good.
Yeah, I swam, but fairies. Because we grew up so near, like, Britain, and, like, Singapore used to be a British colony, I love, like, the British, little fairy books that I got.
Oh, absolutely. And I love that they're just kind of fucking evil.
Yeah! American fairy media is like, oh, they're beautiful and delicate. The rest of the world is like, fairies are fucking tricksters. They will steal your wife and your cows.
Happily. And I'm about that life.
I
I'm about the fairy
love
life.
that life. 10 out of 10 would love to be a fairy.
Oh yeah.
All of this to say is that today, I thought we could talk about two girls, much like you and I, who captured proof of fairies on their father's camera. Well, not exactly. They did eventually admit that the photos were faked. But I thought it might be interesting to discuss the Cottingley fairy hoax and why it was such a huge cornerstone in the English spiritual movement. So the year was 1920, and a series of 5 photographs taken by 2 young English cousins were going the old-timey equivalent of viral. During the First World War, Frances Griffiths moved in with her uncle, aunt, and older cousin Elsie Wright. Frances was 10 at the time, and originally from South Africa, but as her father was fighting in the war, he decided to send her to a safer place, which is how she ended up in the little village of Cottingley in West Yorkshire. Elsie and Frances would spend hours playing in the idyllic garden, oftentimes coming home for supper and regaling the Wrights with stories of fairies and other creatures that they played with. It was July of 1917 when the girls asked to borrow Mr. Wright's camera in order to take pictures with the fairies. Mr. Wright humored the girls and taught them how to use his W. Butcher & Sons quarter-plate Midge camera. Side note, Google this camera. It looks like a fucking briefcase.
Oh, fuck yeah.
It's hilarious. It's, like, huge.
Man, imagine, like, you're trying to go to work and you realize that you didn't bring your briefcase and it's just your fucking camera and you're like, shit,
Fucking camera.
I don't have any of my paperwork.
Goddamn.
I just have a camera.
So the cousins took the camera and went off to play. Later that evening, Mr. Wright, ever the dutiful father, was developing the images that Elsie and Frances had captured. One did clearly show a shot of Frances posing with what looked like a fairy, but Mr. Wright assumed it was some clever trick that the girls had concocted. More than a month later, in September of that same year, the girls once again borrowed the camera, this time returning home with a photo of Elsie and a gnome. Which, girl after my own heart, fucking love gnomes!
Zelda loves gnomes.
So, Mr. Wright was a skeptic, like you.
Hey!
And he thought these photos were just, a bit of fun. But Elsie's mother, Polly Wright, thought that the photos could be more than just a joke that the girls were playing. I would never trust tween girls.
Polly, get your head out of your ass.
Tween girls are fucking crazy.
And they're liars.
For fun!
For fun, to get attention, and who doesn't want attention?
When I was a tween girl, I was like, I'm a witch, I'm a vampire, I can do magic, I can make it rain. And then it would rain, but you know what happens in Singapore, because it's a tropical fucking jungle?
It rains all the time.
It rains all the goddamn time!
Yeah. No, I would be at the beach and I'd be like, I control the wave. But it's just because I knew the rhythm of the ocean.
You little skeptic, where's the magic in your world? In 1919, Mrs. Wright attended a lecture on spiritualism, and afterwards, she showed the photographs to the speaker, who in turn borrowed the photos to show to Edward Gardner, who was the leader of the Theophilosophical movement. Edward was convinced by these photos.
Oh, Edward.
And he even had his friend and photographer, Harold Snelling, great name,
Harry Snelling.
He was like, Harold, can you authenticate these images? And Snelling said that the photos were, this is a quote, genuine, unfaked photographs of single exposure, open air work, show movement in all the fairy figures, and there is no trace whatsoever of studio work involving card or paper models.
They didn't fix it in post.
They did not.
Okay, Harry.
So, after this glowing commendation, Elsie and Francis's photographs spread like wildfire through the British spiritual community, even catching the attention of one of its most famous members, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle.
Yes!
Yeah. So he was convinced that the photographs were real, going so far as to urge the girls to take more photographs so he could do more research on the supernatural. Which, obviously, the girls happily did.
Obviously, I would.
3 more pictures of the fairies were captured around August in 1920. By December of that year, Doyle had written an article about the photographs and had it published in the Strand magazine, which was a popular magazine at the time that published fiction stories like Sherlock fucking Holmes and other general interest articles. But this is like Stephen King asking a little girl to take photos of murders in her backyard. Like, this guy is a famous fucking author being like, can you show me more fairies?
I want more fairies.
Please. So this article saw the photographs spread to even more of the public and even helped start an international controversy where spiritualists and skeptics argued over the legitimacy of the supernatural.
This is the origin of BuzzFeed Unsolved.
This is where BuzzFeed Unsolved started. This is where we get the dichotomy there between the believers and the skeptics.
There it is.
So, people like you, the skeptics, argued that there were a myriad of things wrong with the photographs. They cited things like strange camera angles, the fact that the girls did not really look at the fairies, which was countered with the fact that they were so used to the fairies that they didn't pay attention to them. That was their argument.
Yeah, because, like, you really get that used to fairies. So you're like, oh, I'm just going to ignore you in the photograph that's supposed to be of you.
Exactly.
Sure.
But the biggest controversy was the fact that the fairy in the 4th photograph seemed to be wearing the latest French fashions.
Oh my god.
And everyone was like, how would fairies know what fashion is? How would they know?
They're just really up to date on Vogue.
But despite all of these reasons, the photographs just had a lot of passionate believers. And if you're like Emma, and you think that's fucking ridiculous, you gotta remember that these people were coming out of the First World War, and maybe people just needed something pure to believe in.
Yeah, and I respect that. When you come from an entirely different belief system, sort of like Celtic beliefs and things like that, you're going to view the world differently than me. Like, I'm not going to look at these photos and be like, yeah, that's fairies. Because that's not how I grew up. That's never been how I view the world. But for people who grew up with that influence, I don't believe it, but I get it.
Oh yeah, no, this was also like a time before Photoshop and filters.
Mm-hmm.
People had no idea how else these fucking 2 little girls would have done this. Which was the craziest thing, because it's like, it's 2 little 10-year-old girls, so you're like, yes, we're gonna believe them. How would they be fooling us?
I feel like they just underestimated them.
As most people underestimate young women.
Mm-hmm. All women.
All women, point blank period, but especially young little girls.
Yeah, because they're just flexing their creativity.
Absolutely. So the hoax, unfortunately, all came to an end in 1978 when James Randi found that the fairies in the Cottingley photographs looked remarkably similar to illustrations from a children's book called Princess Mary's Gift Book, which was published in 1915. The photographs were published in 1917. In 1981, Elsie admitted to Joe Cooper in an interview for a magazine called The Unexplained.
Is she about to explain, though?
She's about to explain, but also, what a name. Our podcast could have been The Unexplained.
Yeah, we could have, but we often try to explain things as well.
We really do. And we like Across the Veil because it starts with an A, so we get to the top of the list.
It's true. If you're ever wondering how Zelda and I chose the name of our podcast, it's specifically because we thought we needed an A because it'll pop up higher.
Exactly.
That was it. We like it. We like it, though. We're pleased.
Yeah. Well, Elsie admitted that the fairies were faked, and she claimed that she sketched the fairies using the drawings from Princess Mary's Gift Book as a guide, and then they secured them with hat pins, which is what made them stand up. In fact, the second photo of Elsie with the gnome, you can even see the hat pin, but at that time, the spiritualists claimed that it was the creature's belly button, which actually sparked debates about whether fairies had babies the way humans do.
They lay eggs. They lay eggs.
Fairies are born from flower petals, and you know this.
Fuck.
That is lore.
But do they put eggs into the flower petals? Here's my fairy hypothesis.
Fairy fucking hypothesis.
Fairies fuck. Because their bodies are fully human, it's just their little wings.
Mm-hmm.
They fuck like humans.
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
I do think that they lay eggs, though. I think that they have sex and then kind of like a duck, they lay eggs.
Okay.
If I'm going to describe their eggs, which apparently I am about to do, I would describe them as juicy.
This was not asked of you to do.
I know.
This is not.
I just don't think they'd have a shell. I think that
Oh, so you think they're more amphibian eggs?
they'd be more like amphibian eggs or more like insect eggs, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Which is not to say that they're amphibious in nature at all. It's just to say that I just think that they like juicy eggs. I have to go.
I did not think this conversation would devolve
I'm
into-
leaving across the veil. This is it.
into the discussion of the viscosity of fairy eggs. We do great work here, you guys. We're fucking professionals.
We're doing the Lord's work, guys.
We're doing someone's work, that's for sure, but I do think it is Satan.
I hope you guys have learned a lot with this episode.
That's all you're saying.
I hear him saying that they have juicy eggs.
I think fairies fuck like snakes.
No!
No, they just kind of like rub up against each other and then they go into a flower, and when the flower blooms, a fairy child is born.
Okay, I would almost agree with that, but I just think they fuck like people. What I think happens is that the fairies go into the flower and they fuck like people do. And one of them, whichever one carries the eggs, immediately lays it, and it's, viscous. And then the flower petals reopen, and at that moment, when the sunlight hits the slimy egg, a new fairy bursts from within. And they're like, it's a fairy baby! Yay!
Mm-hmm. And isn't it when a baby laughs, a fairy gets its wings? That's like Peter Pan lore.
I thought it was like clapping.
Yes, it's clapping, you're right. No, wait! It's the clapping of their parents' cheeks! That's what it is! That's the clapping! That's the clapping that gets the baby fairy's wings!
Every time an ass claps, a fairy gets its wings. I don't know how a fairy episode became our most inappropriate one yet, but it did.
It really did. Frances did pass in 1986, followed by Elsie in 1988.
R.I.P. to some
Real bitches.
fucking love them.
They really fucked with all y'all.
I'm obsessed with them.
They got Sherlock fucking Holmes'
Sherlock
daddy.
fucking Holmes'
They
papa.
got him.
They got him.
They were like tweens,
The
and they got him.
Creativity. They fooled nations.
Forever in the book of bad bitches.
We gotta do some hoax.
Yeah, we do. But these two women will go down in the Across the Veil official book of bad bitches. So, Elsie admitted all of the photos were faked, and Frances admitted all of the photos were faked except for the fifth and final photo, which she did argue was real up until the day she died.
A twist.
The photographs are now in the public domain, but you can see them and the cameras used to capture them in the National Science and Media Museum in Bradford, England. Also, this wasn't part of the episode, but have you heard of horse manning?
No.
That was another trend around this time, where it would be one person would lie with their head off of a bench and somebody else would put their head on the other side of the bench so it looked like somebody was headless.
Yeah.
They called it horse manning, and people were like, how are they doing it?
It's so simple.
Yeah.
I love that.
There's a whole YouTube song about it. It came out when planking was a thing. But for now,
We're done.
but we'll see you next time. Across the Veil.